The Southwest Airlines headquarters building in Dallas looked imposing in the early morning sunlight. Maria sat in her rental car in the parking lot, running through her presentation one final time. She had arrived the night before to avoid any travel delays, spending the evening in her hotel room reviewing aircraft systems manuals and practicing answers to technical questions. Her phone rang. "Captain Rodriguez. How are you feeling, Santos?" "Nervous, but ready. I keep reminding myself that I belong here." "You do belong there. Remember what I told you about cargo pilots being better pilots? You've got experience they can't teach in a classroom." Maria took a deep breath. "Thanks for calling, Captain. I should head inside." "Good luck. Call me when it's over, either way." The lobby was modern and professional, filled with model aircraft and photos celebrating Southwest's history. Maria approached the reception desk, wearing her best business suit and carrying a portfolio with her logbooks, certificates, and letters of recommendation. "I'm Maria Santos. I have a 9 o'clock interview." "Of course, Miss Santos. Please have a seat. Captain Williams will be with you shortly." Maria's heart jumped. Captain Williams? The same Captain Williams who had recommended her for the Pacific Air Freight position? She had assumed he was just a contact, not someone who would be conducting her interview. 10 minutes later, a tall man with graying hair and captain stripes approached her. "Maria Santos? I'm Captain James Williams, chief pilot for Southwest Airlines." The pieces suddenly clicked together. Her flight instructor's contact at Southwest wasn't just a friend in the industry. It was the person who made hiring decisions for all Southwest pilots. "Captain Williams, it's an honor to meet you. I had no idea you were the chief pilot when Captain Williams at Pacific recommended me." He smiled as they walked toward the elevator. "Different Captain Williams. Easy mistake. But I've been following your progress since John recommended you for the cargo position. He speaks very highly of your abilities." The interview began in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the airport. Captain Williams was joined by 2 other pilots, Captain Sarah Chun, a line pilot who served on the pilot hiring committee, and Captain Mike Rodriguez, not her cargo captain, but another Rodriguez who handled pilot training. "Let's start with your experience," Captain Williams said. "Tell us about your most challenging flight." Maria had prepared for this question. 3 weeks ago, I was flying medical supplies to a hospital in Bakersfield when we encountered severe turbulence and a sudden hydraulic pressure drop. The cargo shifted, affecting our center of gravity, and we had to declare an emergency. She walked them through her decision-making process, securing the cargo, running emergency checklists, coordinating with air traffic control, and executing a manual landing with reduced control authority. The interview panel listened intently, occasionally asking technical questions about her procedures. "How did you stay calm during the emergency?" Captain Chen asked. "Training and experience. Every emergency procedure I've practiced became automatic. Plus, cargo flying teaches you to expect the unexpected. Equipment fails, weather changes, and cargo loads vary. You learn to adapt quickly." The technical portion of the interview lasted an hour. They tested her knowledge of federal aviation regulations, aircraft systems, weather interpretation, and crew resource management. Maria felt confident in her answers, drawing on both her formal education and real-world experience. "Let's talk about something different," Captain Williams said. "You've probably noticed that our industry doesn't have many pilots who look like you. How do you feel about potentially being one of the few Latina pilots at Southwest?" Maria had anticipated this question, but still found it challenging. "I understand that my presence would be somewhat unique, but I believe diversity makes us stronger as an organization. Different backgrounds bring different perspectives, different problem-solving approaches, different ways of communicating with passengers and crew members." Captain Chen leaned forward. "Have you experienced discrimination in your career?" "I've experienced doubt," Maria replied carefully. "People who assumed I wasn't qualified before they saw me fly. But I've also experienced incredible support from mentors who believed in my potential. I prefer to focus on proving my abilities rather than complaining about obstacles." The interview continued for another 2 hours. They discussed her leadership philosophy, her approach to crew coordination, her long-term career goals, and her understanding of Southwest's corporate culture. Maria felt the conversation flowing naturally, as if she were talking with colleagues rather than being interrogated. "One final question," Captain Williams said. Why Southwest? You could probably get hired at any airline with your qualifications. Maria had thought carefully about this answer. Southwest has a reputation for treating employees like family and passengers like guests. You've also been more progressive about pilot diversity than some other carriers. But honestly, I want to work for an airline that values skill and character over traditional expectations about what a pilot should look like. After the interview panel dismissed her for lunch, Maria walked through the terminal, watching Southwest operations in action. The ground crews worked with obvious pride and efficiency. The gate agents interacted with passengers in a friendly, professional manner. The pilots she observed seemed relaxed and confident. This was exactly the kind of work environment she had dreamed about since beginning flight training. Professional but not rigid. Diverse but unified around common goals. Demanding but supportive. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How did it go, Mija?" Maria typed back, "Still in progress. Interview went well. Waiting to hear back." The afternoon session focused on psychological evaluation and company culture fit. A human resources representative asked questions about her stress management, communication style, and ability to work with diverse teams. The conversation felt more like an orientation than an evaluation. "We'll be in touch within the week," Captain Williams said as the interview concluded. "Thank you for your time today, Maria. It's been a pleasure meeting you." The flight back to Los Angeles gave Maria time to decompress and reflect. She felt good about her performance, but tried not to get too optimistic. Airlines interviewed dozens of candidates for every position, and there were never any guarantees in aviation. Tuesday morning brought another cargo flight, this time to Seattle with a load of aircraft parts and overnight packages. Captain Rodriguez could tell immediately that something had changed in Maria's demeanor. "You look different," he observed during the pre-flight inspection. "Different how?" "More confident. Like you know something the rest of us don't." Maria smiled. "Maybe I'm finally starting to believe what you've been telling me about being a good pilot." About time. False modesty doesn't help anyone. The Seattle flight was routine, but Maria found herself paying closer attention to passenger operations during their fuel stop. She watched Southwest crews preparing their aircraft, noting their procedures and professionalism. If everything went well, she would soon be part of that operation. Wednesday brought news that changed everything. Maria was reviewing flight plans in the Pacific Air Freight Operations office when her personal phone rang. The caller ID showed a Dallas area code. "Hello, this is Maria." "Maria, this is Captain Williams from Southwest Airlines. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Her heart started racing. "Of course, Captain. I'm calling to offer you a position as a first officer with Southwest Airlines. Pending successful completion of our training program, you would begin flying passengers next month." Maria nearly dropped the phone. "Captain Williams, I thank you. Yes, absolutely, I accept." "Outstanding. You'll receive an email today with all the details about training dates, relocation assistance, and salary information. Welcome to the Southwest family, Maria." After ending the call, Maria sat in stunned silence for several minutes. 2 years of rejections, months of cargo flying, countless hours of preparation. It had all led to this moment. She called Captain Rodriguez first. "I got it. Southwest hired me." "Outstanding. I told you cargo pilots are better pilots. When do you start?" "Training begins in 3 weeks. I'll need to give Pacific 2 weeks' notice." "Don't worry about that. We'll throw you a farewell party." "And Maria, remember where you came from. Stay humble, but don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." The call to her parents was emotional. Elena started crying before Maria finished explaining the news. Roberto kept asking if she was sure, as if the job offer might disappear if they talked about it too much. "We're so proud of you, Mija," Elena said through her tears. "You never gave up, even when we thought you should." Carlos was characteristically direct. "How much do airline pilots make?" "More than mechanics," Maria replied with a laugh. "But money isn't why I'm doing this." "I know, but it's still cool that my sister will be flying jumbo jets." The news spread quickly through the cargo operation. Pilots, mechanics, and ground crew members stopped by throughout the week to congratulate Maria and share their own stories about career changes and professional dreams. Many had been following her progress, hoping she would succeed as much for their own inspiration as for her personal achievement. Tommy the cargo loader summed up the general sentiment. You showed us that working hard really does pay off sometimes. Don't forget us little people when you're flying the big jets. Maria's last flight for Pacific Air Freight was an emotional farewell. Captain Rodriguez let her handle all the flying duties while he shared advice about airline culture, continuing education, and maintaining professional relationships. Remember, he said as they completed their final landing together, you're not just representing yourself anymore. Every flight, every decision, every interaction is being watched by people who are still deciding whether women belong in airline cockpits. That's not fair, but it's reality. I understand. And I'm ready for that responsibility. I know you are. That's why you're going to succeed. 3 weeks later, Maria stood in the Southwest Airlines Training Center in Dallas, wearing her new pilot uniform for the first time. She was one of 12 new hires in her training class, and the only woman. The other pilots came from various backgrounds: military veterans, corporate pilots, flight instructors, and even one former air traffic controller. During introductions, Maria briefly shared her background in cargo flying. Several classmates seemed surprised that freight experience qualified someone for passenger operations, but their skepticism faded quickly as training progressed. The 6-week program was intensive and demanding. Aircraft systems, emergency procedures, company policies, customer service protocols, and hours of flight simulation. Maria excelled in every phase, drawing on her diverse flying experience and natural aptitude for complex problem-solving. On graduation day, Elena and Roberto flew to Dallas to watch their daughter receive her airline pilot wings. They sat in the front row of the training center auditorium, beaming with pride as Maria walked across the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, announced the training director, I present to you Southwest Airlines' newest first officers. These pilots represent the future of our industry, and we're proud to welcome them to our team. As Maria looked out at the audience, she saw her parents, several Pacific Air Freight colleagues who had made the trip, and dozens of Southwest employees who understood the significance of this moment. The little girl who had watched airplanes overhead in East Los Angeles had become a professional airline pilot. The engineering student who had been told to be practical had followed her dreams instead. The cargo pilot who had been dismissed as unqualified had proven that determination and skill could overcome any obstacle. 6 months later, Maria was flying passengers between Los Angeles and Phoenix, the same route she had flown countless times in cargo planes. But now her aircraft was filled with families visiting relatives, business travelers heading to meetings, and vacation-bound passengers excited about their destinations. During a layover in Phoenix, a little girl approached Maria in the terminal. Are you really a pilot? The child asked, wide-eyed with wonder. I really am, Maria replied, kneeling down to the girl's eye level. Do you like airplanes? I love them. But my dad says girls can't be pilots. Maria looked up and saw the girl's father approaching, looking embarrassed by his daughter's comment. Well, Maria said gently, your dad might have been thinking about the old days. These days, girls can be anything they want to be. Pilots, doctors, engineers, astronauts. You just have to study hard and never give up on your dreams. The father extended his hand to Maria. Thank you for that. And thank you for being an example for my daughter. I hope she remembers meeting you. As Maria walked toward her gate for the next flight, she reflected on how much had changed in just 2 years. The rejection letters, the family interventions, the doubts about her abilities. All of that seemed like ancient history now. She was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was meant to do. And every flight was proof that the girl who nobody thought could succeed had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, including her own. The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 in the morning. Maria rolled out of bed, her body still adjusting to the irregular schedule that came with cargo flying. 3 months into her job at Pacific Air Freight, she had learned that professional aviation meant sacrificing normal sleep patterns, social plans, and any hope of a predictable routine. She stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. In 2 hours, she would be conducting the pre-flight inspection on a Boeing 737 freighter bound for Phoenix with a cargo hold full of medical supplies and overnight packages. Captain Rodriguez would be in the left seat, and Maria would be handling the radios, navigation, and most of the actual flying. The drive to the freight terminal took 20 minutes through empty Los Angeles streets. Maria had grown to appreciate these quiet morning hours when the city felt almost peaceful. The terminal was a different world from the passenger gates most people associated with airports. No crowds, no security lines, just serious people moving cargo with industrial efficiency. Morning, Santos called Tommy, the lead cargo loader. Got your medical supplies loaded first. Phoenix Hospital is waiting on some critical equipment. Maria nodded and headed to the operations office to review weather reports and flight plans. Captain Rodriguez was already there, a compact man in his 50s who had flown everything from military transports to passenger jets before settling into cargo work. Weather's looking good, he said without looking up from his charts. Light winds, clear skies, should be a smooth flight. You're handling the takeoff and landing today. This was the part Maria loved most. Every flight was another opportunity to prove herself, to demonstrate that she belonged in the cockpit. Rodriguez had been initially skeptical when she joined his crew, but 3 months of consistent performance had earned his respect. The pre-flight inspection took 45 minutes. Maria walked around the aircraft, checking tires, control surfaces, engine intakes, and dozens of other critical components. She had learned that cargo planes worked harder than passenger aircraft, flying more hours with tighter schedules, and mechanical problems could ground a flight for days. Everything looks good, Captain, she reported as they climbed into the cockpit. The next hour was spent running through checklists, programming the flight management computer, and coordinating with air traffic control. Maria handled most of the communication while Rodriguez monitored her performance. She could feel him evaluating every radio call, every switch position, every decision. Los Angeles Ground Control, Pacific Freight 247 requesting pushback from Cargo Ramp Charlie. Pacific Freight 247, pushback approved. Contact ground control on 121.9 when ready to taxi. The Boeing's twin engines spooled up with a satisfying whine. Maria had grown to love the sound of jet engines, the way they represented thousands of hours of engineering and human innovation working together to defy gravity. Taxi, takeoff, and initial climb went smoothly. Once they reached cruising altitude, Rodriguez surprised her with an unexpected question. You hear anything back from Southwest yet? Maria had mentioned the pending interview during her first week, but they hadn't discussed it since. Interview is scheduled for next month. I'm nervous about it. Why nervous? You're a solid pilot. Because it's everything I've been working toward. If I mess this up, I might not get another chance with a major airline. Rodriguez was quiet for several minutes, monitoring the autopilot and checking weather updates. Finally, he spoke again. You know what the difference is between cargo pilots and passenger pilots? What's that? Cargo pilots are better pilots. Maria looked at him skeptically. Come on, Captain. I'm serious. Passenger pilots fly the same routes every day, same aircraft, same procedures. Everything is standardized and predictable. Cargo pilots? We fly different routes, different cargo loads, different airports, different weather. We adapt constantly. We solve problems. He pointed to the flight management system. How many different aircraft types have you flown in the last 3 months? Maria thought about it. Boeing's 737 freighter, Cessna Caravan for small deliveries, and that Beechcraft King Air when we had to rush medical supplies to Bakersfield. 3 different aircraft, 3 different operating systems, 3 different performance profiles. Most passenger pilots fly one aircraft type for years. You're developing skills they never need. This conversation was giving Maria confidence she hadn't expected. Rodriguez continued, when you interview at Southwest, don't apologize for being a cargo pilot. Be proud of it. Tell them about the night you landed in Fresno with 0 visibility and gusty crosswinds to deliver that heart valve. Tell them about troubleshooting that hydraulic problem over Nevada and making a safe emergency landing. You really think cargo experience makes me a better candidate? I know it does. Plus, you've got something else most pilots don't have. What's that? You've had to fight for everything you've achieved. Nobody handed you opportunities because of who you knew or what you looked like. That kind of determination doesn't disappear once you get hired. The flight to Phoenix continued with routine navigation and weather updates. As they began their descent, Rodriguez handed control to Maria. You're landing. Phoenix Approach Control vectored them through a standard arrival pattern. Maria configured the aircraft for landing, running through the familiar checklist items while monitoring airspeed, altitude, and glide path. Looking good, Santos. Nice stable approach. The Boeing touched down smoothly on Phoenix Sky Harbor's runway. Maria felt the satisfaction that came with every successful landing. The moment when training and instinct combined to bring 30 tons of aircraft safely back to Earth. Ground operations in Phoenix took 2 hours. While the cargo was being unloaded and new freight loaded for the return trip, Maria and Rodriguez walked through the terminal for coffee and a quick meal. "Can I ask you something, Captain?" Maria said as they sat in the pilot lounge. "Shoot, did you ever think about quitting? When things got difficult, I mean." Rodriguez smiled. "You know I started flying in the Air Force, right? Fighter jets, then transport planes. When I got out and tried to get hired by the airlines, they told me military pilots were too aggressive, too set in our ways. Took me 18 months to get my first civilian job. I didn't know that. Everyone's got their struggles in this business. The difference is some people use their struggles as excuses, and others use them as motivation. Which one are you?" Before Maria could answer, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at the screen, and her eyes widened. "Everything okay?" Rodriguez asked. "It's from Southwest Airlines. They moved up my interview. It's next week instead of next month. That's either very good news or very bad news. What does your gut tell you?" Maria read the message again. The airline's chief pilot wanted to meet her personally. They were impressed with her recent performance evaluations and wanted to expedite the hiring process. "I think it's good news. They wouldn't rush an interview unless they were seriously considering me. Then, you better start preparing. What's your biggest weakness as a pilot?" The question caught Maria off guard. "I don't know. I guess I can be too focused on perfection sometimes. I spend extra time on pre-flight inspections, double-check calculations that I know are correct." Wrong answer. "What do you mean?" In an interview, they're not asking about your actual weaknesses. They want to know if you can recognize areas for improvement and how you address them. Better answer. "I'm always working to improve my communication skills. I practice radio procedures regularly and ask experienced pilots for feedback on my briefings." They spent the rest of the layover discussing interview techniques, typical questions, and how to present her cargo experience as an asset rather than a stepping stone. The return flight to Los Angeles was delayed due to late-arriving cargo, which meant they would land well after midnight. Maria didn't mind. Night flying had become second nature, and the reduced air traffic made for peaceful approaches. As they climbed out of Phoenix, Rodriguez brought up another topic. "You know there's going to be extra pressure on you at Southwest, right? Being one of the few female pilots, especially Latina pilots. I've thought about that. It's intimidating. It should be motivating. You'll represent possibilities for other young women who think aviation is just for men. That's a responsibility, but it's also an opportunity." Maria had been thinking about this exact issue for months. Every time she walked through an airport in her pilot uniform, she noticed little girls staring. Their expressions ranged from confusion to excitement to wonder. Most had never seen a female pilot before. "My little cousin asked me last week if girls are allowed to be pilots," Maria said. "She's 8 years old and already thinks some careers are just for boys." "What did you tell her?" "I told her girls can be anything they want to be, but they have to work twice as hard to prove it." Good answer. But here's the thing. Once you prove it, the door opens for everyone who comes after you. The remainder of the flight passed quietly. Maria practiced radio procedures, reviewed aircraft systems, and mentally rehearsed answers to potential interview questions. By the time they touched down in Los Angeles, she felt more prepared and confident than she had in months. As they completed the post-flight paperwork, Rodriguez offered final advice. "Remember, they called you for this interview. That means you already meet their qualifications. Now you just have to show them who you are as a person and as a pilot." "Thank you, Captain, for everything. The flying experience, the mentoring, the confidence." "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you're flying passengers for Southwest. Then, buy me dinner somewhere expensive." Maria laughed as she gathered her flight bag and headed to the parking garage. 1 week from today, she would walk into Southwest Airlines headquarters for the most important interview of her career. The drive home took her through the same neighborhoods where she had grown up watching airplanes overhead, dreaming about becoming a pilot. Tomorrow she would call her parents with the news about the moved-up interview. They would worry, as parents do, but Maria knew they were proud of how far she had come. 3 months of cargo flying had taught her more about aviation than 2 years of job searching ever could. She had learned to handle difficult weather, mechanical problems, challenging airports, and demanding schedules. Most importantly, she had learned to trust her own abilities. Whatever happened in the Southwest interview, Maria Santos was no longer the uncertain graduate sending out desperate applications. She was a professional pilot with real experience and growing confidence. The alarm clock would buzz again at 4:30 tomorrow morning for another cargo flight. But for the first time since starting this job, Maria was looking forward to something beyond the daily routine. She was looking forward to proving that all the doubters had been wrong about what she could achieve. Maria Santos stared at the rejection letter in her trembling hands. The 10th one this month. Each airline had found a different way to say the same thing. Thank you for your interest, but we have decided to move forward with other candidates. She crumpled the paper and tossed it into the overflowing trash bin beside her small apartment desk. At 25, Maria had already accumulated more flight hours than most pilots her age. She had her commercial pilot license, instrument rating, and multi-engine certification. Her test scores were exceptional, her flying record spotless. Yet somehow, she couldn't land a single interview with a major airline. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. Mija, your mother made your favorite dinner. Come home tonight. We need to talk. Maria sighed. She knew what that meant. Another family intervention about her unrealistic dreams. Her parents, both hard-working immigrants from El Salvador, had sacrificed everything to give their children better opportunities. They wanted Maria to be practical, to use her engineering degree for a stable office job, instead of chasing what they saw as an impossible fantasy. The drive to her childhood home in East Los Angeles took 40 minutes through heavy traffic. The familiar smell of her mother's pupusas greeted her as she walked through the front door. Her younger brother Carlos was already at the dinner table, still wearing his mechanic's uniform from the auto shop where he worked. There's my pilot sister, Carlos said with a grin, but Maria could hear the forced enthusiasm in his voice. Her mother, Elena, emerged from the kitchen carrying a steaming plate. Sit, Mija. Eat first, then we talk. The dinner conversation was carefully neutral. Carlos talked about a difficult car repair he'd completed. Their father, Roberto, mentioned a promotion opportunity at the construction company where he'd worked for 15 years. Everyone avoided the obvious topic hanging in the air like smoke. Finally, after the dishes were cleared, Roberto cleared his throat. Maria, we love you. You know this, yes? Everything we do because we love our children. Here it comes, Maria thought. Your mother and we've been talking. You've been trying for 2 years now to get this pilot job. Maybe it's time to consider other options. Elena reached across the table and took Maria's hand. Your engineering degree is valuable, Mija. IBM has that opening. Good pay, good benefits, stable work. You could have a good life. Maria had heard this speech before, but tonight it felt different, more final. She looked around the table at the 3 people she loved most in the world. They weren't trying to hurt her. They were trying to protect her from what they saw as inevitable disappointment. I know you think I'm being stubborn, Maria said quietly. Maybe I am. But every time I'm in the cockpit, every time I'm flying, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I can't explain it better than that. Carlos leaned forward. But, Maria, if nobody will hire you, maybe there's a reason. Maybe the airlines know something you don't. The word stung because Maria had wondered the same thing herself. During those long nights after receiving another rejection, she'd questioned everything. Was she really good enough? Was she missing something obvious that everyone else could see? I've been thinking about that too, Maria admitted. And I've been doing some research. You want to know what I found? She pulled out her phone and showed them a news article. Less than 5% of airline pilots are women. Less than 1% are Latino women. The airlines aren't rejecting me because I'm not qualified. They're rejecting me because I don't look like what they think a pilot should look like. Roberto frowned. If that's true, then how do you fight something like that? By being so good they can't ignore me anymore. By finding another way in. Elena squeezed her daughter's hand. What other way, Mija? You've tried everything. Maria had been saving this news for the right moment. Not everything. Remember my flight instructor, Captain Williams? The one who used to fly cargo planes? He called me last week. His company, Pacific Air Freight, is looking for pilots. It's not passenger service, but it's real airline experience. It's a foot in the door. The room went quiet. Carlos was the first to speak. Cargo planes? Like flying boxes around in the middle of the night. Cargo, medical supplies, mail, yes. Night flights, weekend flights, whatever needs to be moved. It's not glamorous, but it's professional flying experience. The kind that passenger airlines respect. Roberto studied his daughter's face. This is what you want. It's a step toward what I want. Captain Williams says if I prove myself with freight, he can help me network with passenger airlines. He knows people. Elena looked worried. Night flying sounds dangerous, Mija. Mom, I've been flying at night since flight school. It's actually more peaceful. Less traffic, better radio communication. And these cargo planes are well maintained. Pacific Air Freight has an excellent safety record. Maria could see her parents exchanging glances, having one of those silent conversations that couples develop after decades of marriage. When would you start? Roberto asked. Next Monday. I'd begin with a 2-week training program. Learn their specific aircraft, their routes, their procedures. Then, I'd be a junior pilot, flying with experienced captains until I build enough time to fly solo. Carlos raised an eyebrow. And the pay? Starting salary is $38,000 a year. Not great, but better than what I'm making at the tutoring center. And it comes with flight benefits. I could visit you guys more often when I'm based in other cities. Elena still looked concerned. You'd be away from home a lot? Some weeks, yes. But, Mom, this is how pilots build careers. We have to go where the flying is. Captain Williams says after a year of cargo experience, passenger airlines will take my application seriously. The conversation continued for another hour. Her parents asked detailed questions about the company, the aircraft, the safety protocols. Maria could tell they were still worried, but they were also beginning to understand that this wasn't just a whim. This was a calculated career move. As Maria prepared to leave, Elena walked her to the car. You're sure about this, Mija? Once you start down this path, it will be hard to change your mind. I'm sure, Mom. I know it looks crazy from the outside, but I need you to trust me on this. Flying isn't just what I do. It's who I am. Elena hugged her daughter tightly. Then, we will support you. But, promise me you'll be careful. I promise. Driving home that night, Maria felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Tomorrow she would call Captain Williams and accept the position. In 1 week, she would begin training on twin-engine cargo planes. It wasn't the path she had originally envisioned, but it was a path forward. She thought about all the rejection letters, all the closed doors, all the moments when giving up would have been easier. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of something new, something that felt like the first real step toward her dream. As she pulled into her apartment complex, Maria's phone rang. Captain Williams' name appeared on the screen. Evening, Maria. I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all, Captain. Actually, I was planning to call you tomorrow. I want to accept the position. There was a pause on the other end of the line. That's excellent news. But I'm actually calling with additional information. Are you sitting down? Maria's heart skipped. Is something wrong? Nothing wrong. But I just got off the phone with my contact at Southwest Airlines. They've been following your applications, and they're impressed with your credentials. They want to interview you next month. Maria nearly dropped the phone. Southwest Airlines? They want to interview me. Here's the thing, Maria. They specifically mentioned that they're looking for qualified female pilots. The industry is changing, slowly but surely. Your timing might be better than you thought. But I still want the cargo position, Captain. Even if Southwest doesn't work out, I need the experience. Smart thinking. Take the cargo job, build your hours, and interview with Southwest when you're ready. Having real airline experience, even cargo experience, will only strengthen your position. After ending the call, Maria sat in her car for several minutes, processing what had just happened. 6 months ago, she couldn't get a single airline to return her calls. Now she had a job offer and an interview lined up with a major carrier. Maybe her father was right about timing. Maybe persistence really did pay off. Or maybe the industry was finally ready to change. Either way, Maria Santos was about to find out what she was truly capable of. The girl who had grown up watching planes fly overhead was finally getting her chance to prove that dreams and determination could overcome any obstacle. She thought about calling her parents to share the news, but decided to wait. There would be time for celebration later. Right now, she needed to focus on the work ahead. Training would be intense, the hours would be long, and the pressure would be constant. But for the first time in 2 years, Maria felt genuinely optimistic about her future. The door was finally opening, and she was ready to walk through it.